Women going through the menopause now are the product generally of the baby boomers, and we have not been taught to look after ourselves. We've been taught to look after others first, and us, we're very secondary. Thirdly, by the time we have children, we're like bottom of the pile. Well, that has got to change, and the menopause often brings about the time when we really do look to change that. We've got to be incredibly intentional. If we're going to come through the menopause in the way that we should, like feeling stronger for having gone through it, then we have got to be intentional about thinking about ourselves, having awareness about ourselves, and looking after ourselves.
Welcome to Breast Intentions, the podcast where we take off the bra of expectations and dive into honest, empowering conversations. We're your hosts, Nadine and Cynthia, two Canadian girls who swapped snow boots for flip-flops in the Cayman Islands. This is your space to feel seen, supported, and a little less alone. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of champagne and get ready for your weekly handful of truth, wellness, and empowerment. Welcome back to Breast Intentions. On today's show, we're joined by Dr. Chantal Basson, a psychologist based here on the island, to explore how menopause can impact relationships in powerful and often unexpected ways. We'll unpack the emotional shifts, communication challenges, and the practical strategies that can help couples move through this stage with more understanding and connection.
And on today's episode, we have Dr. Chantal. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Chantal is here from Life Options, which is down here on the island. Mm-hmm. And you're a psychologist? Psychologist?
Yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist and my specialism is families.
Okay. And our episode today, which is something that we haven't done yet, which is on perimenopause and menopause and the effect that it has on relationships. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily just relationships like partners, but it can also be relationships with your children, relationships with people at work, all different areas. So we're really excited to have you on here. For any of our listeners that are tuning in, if you could just tell us a little bit more about how you ended up down here on the island, how you got started, why you also have maybe a focus on the menopause and the perimenopause.
So I'm a clinical psychologist and I've been doing this a while now. So I've been qualified for 20 years this year, which is just like a bit intense. And I started practicing in the UK in the NHS, working in kind of disabilities, looked after children and families, and progressed into senior leadership. In COVID, it all kind of got a bit too much. I had young children myself, and myself and my husband decided to make a change. So we moved over here with our young girls. They were 2 and 6, they're now 7 and 11. I kind of went through a bit of a journey working in private practice and then HSA, and now I'm with Shari Smith at Life Options. And I focus mainly on families, but I've become way more interested recently in the menopause and been doing more work and talking a bit more because actually this is my journey too. Right. You know, I'm in my late 40s. I went into the perimenopause relatively early, a couple of years ago. And it was when I'd kind of not long moved to Ireland and I kind of felt like I was losing my mind. Mm-hmm. And it made me just so interested in how we start to understand that time in our lives and the impact on relationships. Because, of course, then I've had to go through kind of all of that with my husband.
Mm-hmm. Right. And isn't it interesting, too, when you start to evolve in the work that you do and it starts to move into what is kind of happening with you personally? And this is a question I don't have on here, but with like the perimenopause and the menopause side of things and you experiencing that, do you now kind of look back a little bit to the people that you used to work with or that you had treated where you're like, oh, if only we had this more present and we talked about this a lot more, that those kinds of conversations could have also came up from years ago?
For sure. I remember being in my early 20s and actually working as an assistant office manager in Nottingham in England, and my boss who was in her late 40s early 50s kind of tried to have a conversation with me one day saying she was feeling awful. It was the menopause. I was like in my early 20s and I was like, okay, that sounds really bad. I'm just going to go sort out a car for somebody. And I just felt really awkward and I had no idea what to do. And now I look back at that and I think, like, nobody was talking about it. And she was alone.
Yeah.
You know, and she tried to reach out to this, like, young 20-year-old kid. And
Right.
of course, what she got back was, like, zero. Like, absolute zero from me at the time. And what we need is, like, conversations. It's made me realise what we need is conversations.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, me too. Appreciate you having me on.
So my very first question is, many women say they suddenly just don't feel like themselves during perimenopause and menopause. How does this hormonal transition begin to affect relationships at home? It's probably a very loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's huge. So when we go into the menopause, well, the perimenopause and then the menopause, we start to feel really differently. So, like, we can become deprived of sleep, our temperature is changing, our skin is changing, our body is changing. And, like, some of the things that we experience, they're also kind of forms of torture that are deliberately used, make people feel confused, mess with their identity. And then we're expected to just continue in our relationships in exactly the same way. That's just never going to happen.
Right.
Because those things are going to mess with our sense of self and our trust in ourselves and our sense of belonging and connection with ourselves. And if we want kind of good relationships with people, we have got to have good relationships with ourselves first. And so when that is kind of messed with and taken away from us, we have to work to revise that. And of course, then we're working to revise our relationships.
And everyone, it needs to be educated and on board with that as well, right?
Oh, massively. And of course, they're not. Because, like, in my generation, when we were talking about things like menopause, I mean, the word vaginas wasn't even used.
Right.
When I was a child. That was a kind of a taboo word. Okay, everybody's like,
Yes.
you know. I like talking about sex. I didn't have proper sex education from my parents. It was like all done like this. Just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so it was covered in shame. So we get to, like, going through this and we're kind of just full of shame. And, well, that's not okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Why do you think that menopause can create such an emotional distance between couples, even in previous healthy relationships? So just kind of going off of, like, the home side of things, right? And how that's affecting that husband and wife or the relationships.
So I think a lot of it does start with the change that occurs within us, where we start to lose our sense of self and we start to feel like we're not the person we were, both in terms of feeling and when we look at ourselves in the mirror. You know, I've gone from having this chestnutty, lovely brown hair to, like, I've ended up just going natural. I tried to diet for years and eventually I was just like, just stop it. Just start to accept who you are. Just regain your belonging. So my hair is part of me regaining my belonging. And that's been a really hard journey.
Yeah.
So when we're losing our sense of self and we don't know, like, where we are, we're irritable, we're tired, we're hot, we're cold, we've got maybe restless legs and dry eyes and feel uncomfortable. And then we're trying to connect with our partner and our partner's kind of looking at us like, where did you go? Yeah. Like, where is the woman I have known for all these years? And that woman has changed over time. If we've had children, oh my goodness, we change when we have children and we have different priorities. Like, we go through loads of sleep deprivation, kind of similar things. And then we're changing again. And our partner's trying to understand us and keep up with us. Maybe they're not trying to understand us. Maybe they're just kind of trying to keep up with themselves. And they're a bit like, what is going on here? Well, then we're like, oh, as women, especially as women, we kind of feel a bit like, well, this is a me thing. This is my fault. I need to try and make this better. I need to be a better wife. Like everybody else is rocking it at this time of life. Why aren't I? So then we have shame. And then what shame does, shame then creates hiding behavior.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's why children lie. Okay. It's why adults lie. It's a hiding behavior because we feel shame. And so that makes us avoid talking about this stuff because it's my fault. I have shame. I don't want to talk about it. If it's touched on, it turns to blame and anger very quickly because it's much easier to feel blame to somebody else and anger about that rather than feel our own sense of failure.
Right.
And so what that does is that creates more disconnection, and then that's the cycle. The disconnection and the anger creates more shame, which creates avoidance, which creates more disconnection. So you're kind of going round in a vicious cycle, which is why it impacts our relationships so deeply.
Right. Well, and kind of going off of that, I was going to say there's probably this side, and I probably have even noticed it in myself, where it's like you're kind of at the beginning of like forgetting things and not feeling the greatest. So you're like, it may be a bit of denial. So then you try to like play it off as different things and try to not really bother everyone else in the household and make it look like you're struggling, and you know, because you're also trying to figure out what the hell's going on too,
Right?
Yeah,
we're trying so hard to figure it out, and then we're masking. We're doing that. Everything's fine. Let's just carry on as normal.
Well, you're trying to convince yourself too,
right?
Yeah.
And life does not stop. It doesn't allow us a pause,
Right?
You know, to be able to just meander through the menopause. Oh no, like we're often at full throttle with like kids. A lot of people have adolescent children going through the menopause. Well, that is a hot mess, you know, because you've got hormone clashes versus hormone clashes.
Yeah.
Volcano.
Right. Puberty and menopause at the same time.
Wow. Yeah, that is a whole thing. And so we have to really think very intentionally then about what the role of shame is doing, our masking, and just try to kind of, step away from it. The reason why we don't step away from that is because in order to step away from it, we have to dip into our pits of shame. And this is where I'm incredibly grateful to my husband, who also happens to be a psychologist.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of winning this. But even with all of then that skill set in our house, it has still been incredibly difficult. Last weekend, I just found myself sobbing to him. I'd kind of been feeling some stuff. I was really struggling that week. Everything had been coming at me, kind of work, home, school. And then I just kind of felt like I was absolutely failing. So I'm there like streaming and talking to him. And I was like, I just feel like I'm absolutely failing you. And, you know, he's so great. He kind of sits there because that's just awful. And you are absolutely not failing. And let's have a talk about this. But if you don't have that, then you are very, very much alone.
I was just going to say that.
I can imagine that's one way that a partner could deal with it, but I can imagine several other different scenarios of how a partner might react or what they might say, and even might lead the woman to not share, and cry on her own somewhere,
absolutely,
and not like let out what's actually happening or not communicate that because of how their partner might react.
Absolutely. And even when you've got a great partner and you've got all the knowledge, it still takes all of my effort to talk about this to my husband. I will avoid it for a good while until I'm just like, I can't do that. I need to talk to him. And he's not going to bring it up to me. You know, he's going to be like tiptoeing around and making sure Chantal going to blow up.
Right.
I mean, so it's kind of my responsibility to do that. Some guys actually, and some guys I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of men about this, which is amazing. will actually kind of go and be very proactive in terms of talking about this. But I think it kind of depends on your context.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we
Your
can't really say what a partner should do because it depends on their own relationship, I suppose.
Yeah. And the history of talking about hard things.
Yeah.
Like how was that dealt with in your family of origin?
Yep, because we're all a product of our environment.
There we go.
Yeah. Last week must have just been a hard week for everyone.
Yeah, everybody was feeling the same.
It was the full moon.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
It was. And although we like to think that's a bit of a myth, actually, as human beings, we're massively impacted by the moon.
Yes.
And
100%.
so I spoke to this week was having a tough week.
Well, and even kind of going along that lines of like the perimenopause stuff, we got home and it picked up my kid from school, drove into the driveway, parked the car, got in the house. And then about an hour and a half later, I was like, oh, shoot, I need to go and get my laptop. So went outside to come into here to grab my laptop. And I walk outside and I'm like, there's a car running. I left my car running.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, if you didn't need your computer, it just would have kind of running
all night long. And then, we're sitting here and I forgot my charger for my laptop. And just all of a sudden, everything just starts compounding. And you do kind of go along the lines of just like,
I'll just keep that to myself for now.
Kind of make a little bit of a joke about it. But deep down inside, you're like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's kind of same age as me, going through the same thing. And I said to her, and this has been a real deep fear of mine for the last couple of years, I said, sometimes I really worry that I'm actually developing early onset dementia.
Yes.
And as a psychologist, of course, I know all the signs of that. And it's definitely something I talk to my husband about because he knows more about this than I do. And I think that's one of the really hard things when you change, and we can kind of all kind of say to each other, well, this is the menopause. Actually, when it's you and your internal world, one of our biggest fears is going to be actually it's not, and it's something much bigger.
Yes.
You
I have a client who thought she had a brain tumor for 10 years. And
it's terrifying.
She wasn't
It
treated
is
for
terrifying,
menopause. Just always thought she was dying.
Yeah, that's right. Because actually the symptoms are so strong for some people, not for everyone, but for some people. I was playing a board game with my husband last night. It's one of the things that we do. And it's a board game that I bought him probably 15 years ago, and I've played it many times. I couldn't remember the rules. And I said, it must feel like you're working in an old people's home right now, because I just cannot remember how to do this. But we were giggling about it. And I think that's what we have to do. If we can use humour and playfulness reduces shame.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
And so when we can use it and we can kind of have a bit of a giggle about you leaving your car on, I have done exactly the same thing, by the way.
I left the keys. I left the keys in my front door.
There you go.
I was like, where are my keys? And okay, that's safe.
They're all very normal things to do when you're going through the menopause and your cognitive capacity changes.
So,
but it can, like you were saying, Nadine, it can compound, right? Like you leave the car on and then you forget your charger, and then somebody cancels that you were supposed to do something important with. And then, so it's like, and then you get emotional, and it has a huge impact on how we're feeling. Yeah,
it does.
Absolutely massive.
So another impact that, or another area that can be impacted is libido. And women feeling guilty because their libido has changed, which is obviously, it can change relationships.
Yeah.
But how much of that is hormonal versus emotional or relational?
I kind of think it's probably like a mixture of all of those three. So when we think about the libido and changes in libido, it's one of those kind of things that we just want to do like this and not really talk about it. Just pretend it doesn't exist. Okay. And so I was talking to a friend of mine about libido. I talked to a Caymanian friend, and I was saying, well, what would you do? What do you think you and your friends would do about vaginal dryness? And they said, well, we just wouldn't. We just put up with it and not do anything. And I spoke to a friend of mine from New Jersey, and she said, well, it's like the Sahara down there, so you've got to go and get some help for it. Okay. When we think about libido, we often think about it in terms of like our libido is directly connected with like how good a person we are, how good a wife we are, how good a partner we are. And so we tie it up with like all the values of being like a woman, a good woman, if you like. And actually what we need to do is be able to separate that. Libido is not like kindness. It's not care, nurture, honesty. It's not loyalty. Libido is just our desire to have sexual relationships with somebody. And we can think about it in a biopsychosocial way. Okay, so we think about it biologically, psychologically, and then social. So like biologically, then we think about the friction, okay, issue. And if we have vaginal dryness, that is going to be incredibly uncomfortable. Okay. And then we've got to think about like the psychological aspect. So sleep, sensory overload, like what's going on in our relationship at that time. And then we want to think about like, and the social aspect, which is much more that kind of shame, hide, freeze, avoidance, disconnect. So we need to think about all those three when we kind of think about libido. But of course, when we've got those three issues going on, if we've got a biological aspect, the psychological aspect, and then the social aspect, then we've got an awful lot impacting our ability to and drive to have sex. And so, of course, it massively impacts our relationships, especially if we've got more of that avoidance. That was like definitely me. I was a real avoider. And my husband's kind of an avoider too. He's very gentle. That's kind of why I'm with him. He's so steady, stable, gentle, kind. And so he's not going to make me feel uncomfortable. He's just going to put up with it.
Yeah.
But then it's so important that we talk about it, because when I talked about that with my husband, and I was like, look, I feel like I'm totally failing you as a wife, and I'm really sorry. He's then like, look, it's okay. And I remember I was having a conversation with my daughter in front of him once, and she was saying, like, what happens if like your partner annoys you? I said, well, of course your partner will annoy you. She said, well, does Daddy annoy you? I was like, yeah, of course he annoys me sometimes. But I said, look, my love for him, like, massively outweighs anything that the annoyance can do. And, like, my husband was like, oh, my goodness. Like, thank you so much for saying that. gave me a big hug. And I was like, is that something you don't know? Because if that's something you don't know, then I'm doing something wrong. And so it really made me think, what is this? Like my lower libido, me going through the menopause, me losing myself, trying to find myself, being grouchy. What's that doing to him? And what it's doing to him is it's making him think it's him.
Right.
It's like somehow I'm failing. I'm not good enough. And I was like, okay, I've really got to think about this, because he is not failing. He's a great husband. He's a great father. He's a great man. He's got loads and loads of amazing stuff in his life and going for him. And so that really made me want to be much more intentional about talking about it. And so each time we do, I kind of say to him, this is not because I don't love you, and he's always like, I'm so glad you said that, because it's kind of reassuring him that, no, I feel exactly the same way about you that I always have. But like, I am changing and this is different. I am trying to figure this out. So by talking about it, it kind of reduces everybody's shame. We kind of think about our own shame when we hide. And what we're not doing when we're thinking about our own shame is the other person's shame. Okay. And if we're not thinking about that, depending on how our partner is, that can turn for them very quickly into blame and anger. You're getting this wrong. You need to do something about it. And of course, then for us, we're going to be defensive. That dips into our shame. We're going to be blaming and angry.
Right.
So if we're in then that dynamic, that's hugely detrimental to relationships. And that's why when we go through the perimenopause and the menopause and our relationships change, it's one of the reasons why actually marriages can fall apart.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So going along the lines of like the misunderstandings, what are also some of the other biggest misunderstandings that partners have about what women are experiencing during menopause?
Well, it's so internal. It's like all about our own internal body and our internal world. And we kind of think because we're going through it, other people can sort of see it, or like we're a window.
Yeah.
Of course, we are not a window, we're a wall.
Yeah.
Nobody can see it.
Right.
And so, like I have dry eyes. And my husband last night was looking for some eye drops because he got an eyelash or something. And I was like, yeah, we've got some eye drops. He's like, are they for the cat? I'm like, no, they're not for the cat. So why have you got these eye drops? It's like, they're for me, for the menopause. It's like you get dry eyes in the menopause. Yeah. You get like dry everything.
Right.
Dry everything. Insert excluded. And so it's like, oh yeah, of course. So I've got like cream for vaginal dryness, eye drops for eye dryness, like hand cream. Oh, it's just everything. Everything. But like nobody knows. We assume that people know, but it's hidden. And so the more we can talk about it and explain, the more actually that men can be proactive and figure this out too about what might be going on, the better it's going to be. But for women, because it creates shame, what I would say is like, just start to find a way to talk about it if you can. Not just, because just sounds easy. It's not just. It's find a way to talk about it if you can. And find one thing, like dry eyes is a really good thing to start with if you have dry eyes. Because there's no taboo about dry eyes.
Right.
Okay. And that can lead to a conversation about dry anything.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, true.
So I think it's really an understanding about how hidden really this journey is, and understanding that we're not a window.
Right. Yeah. It's not written.
It's not written.
Right.
No. And there's not that much out there that's easily accessible. So it's definitely getting better. But there needs to be more. We need to talk about this more.
Right.
And it is so individual, right? Like even if there was information that's accessible that a partner could go look up and look at, like it doesn't mean that everything's going to apply to his partner or her partner.
That's right.
It's because everybody's so different. Everybody goes through it differently.
Yeah, exactly.
And their life needs might be different than your needs and yours. So the conversations are so important.
That's right. I mean, some women massively struggle with restless legs at night. It really interrupts their sleep. That's not something I really know about. And lots of women get massive hot flushes. I get a night sweat like at 3 a.m. That's it for me. But like for some women, it's absolutely excruciating. So understanding like, right, what is your journey and like, what is my journey and how is it different to your journey? What do we connect on? What's different? And then being able to communicate that.
Right. So let's go along the lines of still with relationships, but now kind of like relationships with our parents and with children, building our careers, and navigating body changes all at once. Like, how do women in midlife often deal with all of that?
I mean, it could be a bit of a hot mess, is what I would say. Because you're right, we're often like at the pinnacle of our careers, and the menopause is like really mean because it stops your brain from working in the way it did. And so you're at the top of your career, and you're not able to function in a way you could like 10 years ago. And it's royally annoying. But like when we kind of bring it all together, when I think about like what's really hard, I think it's just the absolute overload. You know, so if you've got kids, you're getting them out in the morning, first of all, to school. You're sometimes dealing with their dynamics in their friendship groups. Then you're going to work and you're problem solving generally all day. You know, as women, especially still in my generation, I think it's changing now in younger generations, and maybe they won't have this. But like we're still kind of in charge of what's going on at home, in charge of like extracurriculars, or what we're going to have for dinner. And so then like maybe we're like shopping and then cooking, and like my husband cooks too, so that's brilliant. But like you get home and the kids are home and you get the mummy soundtrack, the mummy. I mean, like that, like who is not going to explode?
Well, and then, on top of that, probably checking up on your parents, however often, and worrying about
them.
So when do you actually have that pocket of time in your day to unwind, to think about yourself?
And we're not taught to do it.
Yeah.
Out of like everybody, like women going through the menopause now are the product generally of the baby boomers. And we have not been taught to look after ourselves. We've been taught to look after others first. And us, we're very secondary. Thirdly, by the time we have children, we're like bottom of the pile. Well, that has got to change. And the menopause often brings about the time when we really do look to change that. We've got to be incredibly intentional. If we're going to come through the menopause in the way that we should, like feeling stronger for having gone through it, then we have got to be intentional about thinking about ourselves, having awareness about ourselves and looking after ourselves. And that's definitely been a shift that I've been through. Like after this, I'm actually going to go get some acupuncture. And I used to kind of like just put it in my diary and not say anything. And then I was talking to my husband about it. I was like, this has been incredibly helpful. And he said, well, then you've got to keep going, And I was like, are you sure? Is that something like in our budget that's okay? And he's like, absolutely. Because if you're not okay, nobody's okay in this family, So we've got to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And make the time. And we should not have to ask for permission for it, by the way. I'm totally fed up of asking for permission for stuff because somehow I feel like I'm less worth it. Ridiculous.
Well, and I think going back to that conversation that we were having before about us being a product of our environment, a lot of the stuff that they do is like within nutrition, and a lot of that comes from like being a product of our environment and like weight and stuff like that. And with what you were saying is a lot of our moms missed the boat, quote unquote, from like the HRT side.
Yeah, for sure.
And now we are moving into this opportunity where we now get to use it, and we're trying to familiarize ourselves with it and educate ourselves around it. But there's still that conversation that, like you were saying, none of us really learned to have because of the product of, being a product of our environment, because we were never taught by our moms to be able to have that conversation and that open dialogue. So now, like you were saying, which I do hope is that the people that come after us have this opportunity to now be more self-aware and be more communicative and that kind of thing. So there's a hope.
I think there's a massive hope.
Yeah,
I mean, the young people I see coming into therapy now, they are so incredibly self-aware, especially the women. Like, they are amazing. I work with some 26-year-olds who are just like so intentional. They really blow me away. So,
just wanting to do the work.
Yeah, wanting to do the work, really working hard, really thinking about themselves, putting themselves first. And that is a massive shift, and gives me enormous hope.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Menopause often forces women to reevaluate who they are. How can that identity shift impact marriages and long-term partnerships?
I guess it depends on how much we have self-sacrificed in our relationships and our marriages. If we have kind of treated ourselves like a doormat, and then we kind of move into the menopause, and we're like, hang on a minute. Is this okay? This is not okay. Because actually, we start to kind of put up with so much less in the menopause. It just really makes us, I wish I knew psychologically what that was all about. But I think we start to develop some wisdom as we get a bit older.
Yeah, and a voice.
And a voice. And so suddenly, like, we are, airing our voice, sticking up for ourselves, self-sacrificing less, realising we need to self-sacrifice less. Well, if our partner doesn't come on that journey with us and isn't ready and flexible to do that, then we are in two very different places.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you kind of bring what we were talking about before, about like how that kind of change within ourselves kind of creates disconnect and shame and avoidance and blame and anger, if then we go into that dynamic and we've got this like self-sacrificing moving into less self-sacrificing and more speaking up for ourselves, well, then we've got a massive split. Mm-hmm. And so kind of why wouldn't it? Also, I think for men, kind of looking at their wives or partners, sometimes that's just enormous for them. I don't mean kind of looking at them physically. I mean just looking at who they are and their identity. Well, maybe that's too much for them, you know. So I think we've got to go on this journey kind of together enough in order to come through it together.
For sure.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It is. And even speaking about like just the hormone therapy side, we had a doctor on just to talk about TRT for men. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how, even being able to meet, because guys are going through
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's underrated and it's not spoken about at all. I'm not sure it's even understood properly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Andropause, I think that's what he said.
Mm.
And so if, both people are kind of joining at that time, just from a hormone perspective, and one person is using maybe a hormone therapy to like help them and they're doing that work and the other person maybe isn't, you're also going to see a little bit of that split as well, just from a hormone therapy side.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, my husband sleeps really badly, so that's kind of how he's being impacted. And I keep saying to him, why don't you go see somebody? Whereas I'm like patched up to the hilt, like slapping on these giant eye drops. He's like, maybe I'll take a melatonin.
Yeah.
Come on. It's so different. I think we look after ourselves so differently.
Yeah.
But again, that is something I see differently in the younger generation of men, really taking care of themselves a lot better.
Good. And my last question, why do some women suddenly lose tolerance for dynamics they accepted for years before menopause? Well, we talked about that a little bit. But...
We did. And we do. We kind of develop more of a wise mind. I think because we're going through something and it really makes us stop and think about ourselves, maybe for the first time, but meaning to do something for ourselves in order to help ourselves. It does start to then shift on that.
I think sometimes too, you don't even have a choice. Like it just comes out.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Slaps you in the face.
You could really care less at that point.
Yeah. Well, that's what I often say is that, I'm now in the era where I just don't give up anymore.
Right.
And it's because of perimenopause.
It's very freeing.
It is.
Yeah. I think maybe sometimes you have to bite your tongue.
Yes, for sure.
Think about what it is that you are going to say and
But I've definitely seen a shift where
me too.
I'm not, I guess, putting up with things like I used to, or don't care so much anymore about things I used to care about.
Yeah, I agree.
In a good way. Yeah,
for sure.
So how can partners better support women emotionally instead of taking their symptoms so personally?
I think educating yourself, go out there and dig. I love it when kind of I do a talk and then like men come up and talk to me about how that's impacted them, what they've heard, that it's really validating for them. I told a story when I did like one of my first bigger talks here. I was talking just about mental health, but I was talking about blame and shame. I went out one day and I asked my husband to do the dishwasher. And I came back, long story short, he hadn't done it. There were lots of reasons why, because I didn't know that, and I was livid. And my daughter was with me. I was like, what on earth is going on? Ask Betty to do the dishwasher, yada, yada, yada. She wrote me a note, like, don't do this again. Like, I was so livid. And inside, I was, like, so angry at him. But I just took a minute to think, why am I so angry? Okay, he's not done the dishwasher. That is like really irritating. Okay. but it doesn't make him like a really worthless person. So I had to stop and think about, like, what is my despair? Why am I feeling this? What's my shame? And actually, when I stopped to think about it, my shame was, I wish I could just get this right. I wish I was a better housewife. I wish I was kind of better at looking after my home, at getting all the dishes in the dishwasher the night before. That was my shame. I'm not good at this. And I know that that is not my forte. And most of the time when I'm in my wise mind, I can think, I know that's not my forte. I am not worried about that. You know, I'm a good psychologist. I'm not great at looking after my home. So I have someone come in to give me a hand a couple of times a week. But when I talked about that, and there's a guy who heard it, and he came to say, I've never felt so seen, when he talked about the dishwasher story. And then when it was kind of put online, he sent it to his wife, who then got in touch with me and said, I feel like you might just have saved our marriage. And it's because actually we all need to be seen, but we all need to educate ourselves as well about these things. We can get carried away with our own anger when our husbands or wives don't do something. But actually we need to really examine the depths of that anger. Is that proportionate to the situation? In my case with the dishwasher, it wasn't proportionate to the situation, but it takes a lot to stop and think about it, because then we dip into shame. And of course, we avoid shame, so we don't want to go there. But if we can do that, if we can understand our shame and our pit of despair, then actually we're going to come out of that with reduced shame and a much better understanding of ourselves and a much better connection with our partner.
And is it fair to say that some men, like, say, you know, I guess the wife in this example comes home and is angry about the dishwasher and yelling, and then he can take it personally and he could get defensive and say, well, I know I should have done, like, he would turn it around, like, think that it was his fault and he's a bad partner, and not, I guess, take a step back also and think like, oh, it could be that
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and not sort of take it personally and end up in a big fight.
So we can take accountability for our bit, okay? Which is, I'm really sorry I didn't do the dishwasher. You asked me to do that, and that would have been really annoying because I said I was going to do it. Yeah, you came home, it wasn't done. I totally get it. Here's why. But let's also talk about why this is making us feel like such big feelings together, because there's something underneath that. Okay, and it's like understanding that underneath bit in a partnership that really helps.
Oh, for sure. The root,
Right.
And on that topic, are there specific conversations that couples should or could be having to help with this, like, say, around intimacy or attraction and to changing needs?
Absolutely. And couples often aren't because of that avoidance. But we need to be really kind of talking about everything, you know, and the more we can do that, the better. So we need to be talking about physical and emotional intimacy, because intimacy isn't just physical. You know, last night I was playing a board game. I had a great, our kids just fancied a movie night. We're like, do you want to come and play a board game? I'm like, no, they're watching some cartoon movie and we're playing a board game and we're having a giggle, and that is emotional intimacy. We are connecting, okay? And within that, while we're playing, we're talking about lots of different things, not just like the board game, but like we probably talked about emotional intimacy. We probably kind of talked about our day-to-day. The more we can communicate, the more we can create emotional intimacy, the better it's going to be. To do that, we have to just start talking about something. And finding your segue in is really the thing you're trying to do if you're not talking about these things. That kind of segue in, it needs to be a gentle one. Don't just go full throttle into everything. Okay, don't find the hardest thing. Find the easiest thing. And start to develop the language together.
Is there a way that couples can communicate without creating the shame and the defensiveness?
I mean, I'm going to say no. Actually, there isn't. Okay. Because when we start to talk about these things, we do feel the shame and we do feel defensive. But there's a way, and I call it scooping it up. There's a way we can scoop somebody's shame. So if I say something to you today, and then I can just see on your face that you're feeling a way about it, the thing I'm going to say is, oh my goodness, Cynthia, I've just realised that what I said has made you feel something. And I know that wasn't my intention. It doesn't matter. What did that just make you feel? Okay, and you're going to say, well, I just felt like I was just a really bad mom when you said that. Or like I was a really bad partner because that's what I do.
Mm.
And I'm going to go, oh my goodness, well, if that's how it felt when I said that, that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard. Okay. And we can be really quick to defend ourselves. Well, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
That wasn't my intention.
Right.
But by doing that, I'm kind of dismissing your feelings. What I'm doing instead is like acknowledging your feelings. Yeah, okay, I just made you feel this way by what I said. I'm going to scoop it. And I'm going to sit with it.
Mm.
So we can't avoid the defensiveness and the shame, but we can see it, acknowledge it, and scoop it. And that's really healing, because that's how we feel seen as human beings. When somebody notices we feel something, and it's like, oh my goodness, you're feeling this way.
Right. Yeah.
Then actually we're like, oh, I've just been really seen, and isn't that lovely?
Do you think that we're more likely, I mean, I don't mean in specifically with relationships, but just in life, I think we're more likely to not sit with it, to kind of, because it's easier to maybe just move on, shove it aside.
Yeah, and quickly.
Right. But we want to sit in it, sit with it to help move forward.
That's right. And if we're talking about this and blame and anger come, it's an absolute red flag. There's shame underneath it. So what I would say is, if you're having a conversation, shame and anger comes along, or anger comes along and blame, I would really try to see if you can have a look at that and be curious about, why is that anger there? And what's the shame that's sitting underneath it? Okay. Because otherwise we're just running away from feelings.
Because it's easier.
Yeah, right.
We think.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's way easier. Yeah. It is actually easier. Of course, there's more pain in the long run.
Right.
But it's easier in the moment.
Yes, we'll move on to like physical now. What role does physical discomfort, like sleep disruption, vaginal dryness, fatigue, or body changes, play in relationship tension and disconnection?
I mean, it's massive, because if you're not physically comfortable, how are you ever going to want physical intimacy? I mean, you're just not. So
or emotional intimacy.
Right.
Maybe.
Yes.
Like sometimes I just want to be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes us grumpy. Like physical discomfort and like that sensory overload that we get, it makes us really grouchy. And that can cause shame in other people, because then they think, oh, it was me that caused that.
Right.
We have a thing in our house called the grumpy alert. And I started it with my kids because I didn't want them to think it was their fault that I was grumpy. I wanted to ensure they knew that this was me, that it was something I was going through, not them. And so I would kind of start to name it. Oh, I'm so grumpy. That's horrible. I wonder if you feel like that's your fault. And if they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's awful that you would think that my grumpiness is your fault. You need to know there is nothing that you can really do to make me that grumpy. Okay. And I'm really sorry that I have done that. And then we started to introduce like this narrative called the grumpy alert. And I'd be like, what, do you know what? It'd be really helpful if, could you give me a grumpy alert? And we've got a little song that comes from a UK cartoon called The Flumps that I watched when I was a kid. And there's little songs like, she's grumpy, she's grumpy. So they sing to me, she's grumpy. And it like reduces my grumpiness straight away. Yeah. And my husband does it to me.
Like if they notice that you might be a bit grumpy.
That's right.
Okay.
And it really helps with grumpiness.
I bet.
But more importantly, it stops them from feeling shame. And as a mother, as a parent, as a woman, that is so important that they don't grow up the shame of my menopause, that they grow up understanding that's a me thing and not a them thing.
Mm-hmm.
How can women advocate for themselves when they feel dismissed by doctors, partners, or even society during this transition?
Like, this is like so many people's journey, and it's horrible because you go to the doctor and you say, don't feel right, and I think I might be going into the menopause, and they take your bloods and they say, no, your levels are fine. Try and do your diet. Well, I tried that. I was about to kill somebody. Okay, honestly, it was awful. I felt like I was losing my mind. And women do, they feel like they're losing their mind, and yet their blood levels are normal because they're really hard to pick up at this point. They're fluctuating. Often the estrogen levels on day does look good. So we need to be able to go and say, I know me. I know my body. I know something isn't right. Okay. And I know my blood levels are right, but I am not okay. And I need to do something. The caveat I would bring here is when we've experienced trauma. So trauma goes through that same cycle, that shame, hiding, anger, blame kind of cycle. And when we go through the menopause and we've experienced significant trauma, it can make the menopause so much emotionally worse. Okay. So when we're starting then to go into the perimenopause and we've had lots of shame, it can actually be helpful. And we've had lots of trauma, I should say. It can actually be helpful to go get some help in order to just try and wiggle out the trauma bit that's then impacting our emotional state in the menopause. I think it's also helpful, like a lot of young women have premenstrual dysphoria. It looks like the same kind of thing. And so I work with a few young women, and it's the same thing. It does not mean we shouldn't be getting help. So again, it's happened to so many of us. When I first went to the doctor, they're like, well, your blood levels are okay, so let's just try and tweak your diet. I was eating chickpeas like there was no tomorrow. I eat chickpeas. Anyway, eventually I went and I saw a different doctor, and I said, look, I feel like I'm going nuts here. Can you help me? And that they educated me. They said, actually, it's really hard to pick up on in your bloods. We're probably not going to pick it up in your bloods, but we are going to trial a tablet, like a contraceptive tablet, and see what the impact is. And when that worked, they're like, right, now we know we can put you on HRT because we know this is what's going on. So then they discussed my options, and they gave me a coil and an HRT patch, and they've slowly built the dose. And oh my goodness, what a game changer that has been.
Right.
You know.
You were talking about trauma, and for anyone that's listening, what exactly do you mean by trauma?
So usually I'm thinking about developmental trauma. So things that have happened to you as a child, or to you as a child, like emotional abuse, long-term emotional neglect, sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, witnessing that. We often think of them as extremes. Most people who have developmental trauma, it was more of a drip, 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 drip. And so they think actually, oh, it wasn't that bad. But the impact on them is that their cortisol levels were massive during childhood. It's turned their amygdala on, full switch. And then you go through life with your alert system, your fight, flight, freeze system in full flow, which shuts down our wise mind. It shuts down our frontal cortex. And so we can kind of manage through that. But then we go into the perimenopause and we cannot manage that because actually our brain is then on fire. When we go into the menopause, our cortisol levels are high, go higher anyway. We don't have all the estrogen to try and calm that. Our cortex is shut down more. It's one of the reasons why also we get more brain fog. It's not the only reason, but it's also one of the reasons. And so then when you've got two things doing the same thing, the trauma and the menopause, and then your amygdala's on fire and you're just in pure fight, flight, freeze, then we just cannot hope to function in any way that is okay for us.
And is this people who have not healed from the trauma, or still people who have healed from the trauma?
So they can have done quite a lot of work on the trauma, and it can still have an impact. So it's not, we can have done work and still have this impact, but not always. It depends on how well regulated we are and how well we can regulate our emotions.
Okay.
I mean, that could be a whole topic in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we've never really talked about that.
No,
Okay.
I didn't even know anything about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we need to think about
this. Have you seen menopause actually become a catalyst for stronger, healthier, more authentic relationships?
That is a great question. And when I was looking at this, I was trying to think, I was like, yeah, of course. And I was thinking, have I? I think, yes, I have. But it's often not like the menopause that's the catalyst. It can be a tricky time of life anyway, with kids, careers, like figuring out who you really are.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's often when we're doing the work at that time anyway, or when we're communicating and our communication's getting better, maybe because of going through the menopause. I don't think it's just because of the menopause, but I think it's probably a lot of things coming together that can be a catalyst for a healthier relationship.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. But a really good question.
Yeah. If you could leave women and their partners with one message about navigating love and connection during menopause, what would it be?
It would be work on your shame around your libido first, okay? Because that does not denote how much you love somebody or how much you are loved. And find your segue into talking. Just find one thing and then educate yourself.
Right. What about for people like not partners, but for women, like that one message for women navigating like older parents, navigating business life, working as a professional, having children? What's one message that you can give women? Just more of like the overall.
I think stop trying to expect perfection of yourself in all of those realms.
Or almost just stop trying to live the way that you used to, or expect that you should be living the way that you used to.
I mean, it's often not even the way we used to. I think it's been like the way we've always tried to, the levels that we set for ourselves that we're always trying to meet. And then like we've probably way surpassed them, to be honest, in terms of like career, kids, etc. But like we're still reaching for more somehow. And we have to have realistic expectations of how much we can do, how well. You know, we absolutely have to. You have to have so much self-compassion during our lives at this stage.
Right.
And having self-compassion sounds something like, okay, some days I am a hot mess and I'm going to leave the car running and I'm going to forget to pick the kids up from school. Okay. And I'm still a worthwhile human being, you know. We have a benchmark, like as long as everyone is alive and hasn't been harmed, we're okay. You know, on the days when it's really, really hard.
Right.
We have to kind of have something like that on the days that are really, really hard. Not every day, but we have got to have some self-compassion and realism.
It's a good thing to just kind of remind yourself of on those bad days. Everyone's still alive.
Yeah.
But when I was teaching trainee psychologists back in the UK, I had a whole raft of them, one after the other for years. And they would come to me like in a panic because something had gone wrong in a case. And I would sit them down and I was like, okay, let me just check one thing. Is anybody dead? And they're like, no. Okay, it's like, then everything is workable. Everything's working.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so I had a few trainees who like all knew each other, like, okay, nobody's dead. That, you know, okay, maybe that's a bit of a low mark, but also important to remember that, like, if everybody's alive and okay, then we can everything can be sorted out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think we just realized that we have much more that we can unwrap through more conversations with you. So we really, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you asking me. Thank you.
Yeah. And how can people find you if they need to reach out to you and ask you questions and book an appointment?
They can look on the Life Options website,
Okay.
which is www.lifeoptions.ky. And they can find me there and book an appointment through there by reaching out.
And the other thing, and maybe I'll make sure that I tag it in the show's notes, is you spoke at the 2026 Women's Health Conference, International Women's Health Conference, or Women's Health Conference. And your YouTube is up.
Yeah. Do you know, I haven't shared that on any platform.
Why not?
I think because I've been like this, I share a lot of myself. And it's really excruciatingly difficult. Like, I don't watch anything back or listen to anything back, because I say what I truly believe. And I'm so passionate about saying what needs to be said.
Yeah.
So much so that I can't listen back to it.
Because then you start overthinking it. And
and I'm dipping into my shame, you know, so I avoid. And I shouldn't. And I just need, maybe doing this means I need to go and just put that onto my LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah. We can always do it for you. Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Breast Intentions. We hope you felt seen, supported, and maybe had a few laughs along the way. Don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review us. Your support keeps the conversation alive. Follow us on social media for more insights, behind-the-scenes fun, and updates on future episodes. Got a topic you want us to dive into? We'd love to hear from you. Remember, life's too short for bad bras, toxic relationships, and kale you don't actually like. So until next time, stay bold and keep your breast intentions exactly where they belong, front and center. Now go crush midlife, or at least today's to-do list. Cheers!